Welcome back, everybody. As you probably guessed from the title of the video and the thumbnail that we used, we are going over this pistol today. This is the Gen 5 Glock 22 chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson. This particular one is the MOS version. I've done lots of reviews on MOS Glocks, talked about it ad nauseum, so I'm kind of focused basically on the Gen 5 Glock 22 aspect of it, not so much the MOS. Of course, we will touch on that as well, though. So, of course, what is this? It's a full-size, duty-size gun that is chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson. As we mentioned, I would be willing to bet the majority of the comments in this video, on this video rather, will be regarding the caliber and whether or not it's still relevant, whether it's terrible, whatever the case may be. We'll probably touch on that lately, but we are not going to go into detail on that. But this one has all of the Gen 5 upgrades. It has a standard capacity 15 round magazine, and definitely has some things going for it that the Gen 4 didn't, the Gen 3 didn't, and the Gen 2 didn't, and we will show you all of those guns as well. But before we get up close and personal and walk through the details on it, I do want to thank two folks. Number one is going to be Firearms Depot. They did send this out for the review. I have absolutely zero relationship with Glock at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure they generally don't like me, and that's okay, because we have partners like Firearms Depot that will send us firearms for review, and they don't care what we say, just that we mention them, so we mention them. And secondly, we want to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is these folks. These are holsters from We the People Holsters. They offer a number of different attachment systems, whether you want to have an outside the waistband system like we have here, inside the waistband system, models for lots of different guns. As you guys can see here, this one is sporting the Let's Go Brandon pattern, which probably many of you will like. They offer optics cut versions, light versions, etc. There's tons and tons of options over there at We the People Holsters. Additionally, there should be a coupon code down below in the video description for you guys to save a little bit of money. Again, thank you to them for sponsoring the video. Now let's get into the details of the gun. As we mentioned in the intro, it does come with 15 round magazines. It comes with 3 of them, in fact. They are steel lined and they are ambidextrously cut, so that way you can swap your mag release to either side. This is Gen 4 mag. The Gen 5 mags actually have a lip that sticks out a little bit that make it easier to grip and rip should you have a double feed, but they work with all generations of Glock 40 caliber magazines, including our standard capacity 22 rounders that we have here. And additionally, throughout the review, we've been using some ETS magazines, some clear ones of various different capacities. All have worked great in this gun, so no complaints about that. Make sure it is clear. It is. At this point, we'll walk through the gun sort of back to front on this one. So being a Gen 5, it does have the interchangeable backstrap system. The smallest one is going to be a little bit smaller than your Gen 3 would be. So if Gen 3's kind of felt blocky for you, you can make it a little bit smaller. Now I have large hands, so I tend to like a larger grip on a pistol, so I've added the large one here with the beaver tail extension. They also make a large without the beaver tail extension. So as you can see there, if you grip nice and high up on the gun, that beaver tail will help protect your skin in your hand there as the slide reciprocates back. If you're somebody who gets slide bite, might be something to look into. But again, let you set it up for your size, however you want it to be. But again, without one on there, it's a little bit smaller than a Gen 3. You can add the medium and that will get it the same size as a Gen 3, and then this one's a little bit bigger. So texture-wise, it's very good. It has an aggressive texture on the sides, but more importantly, on the back strap here and on the front strap, it has an aggressive texture as well. That is important, of course, because under recoil, when the gun is moving like this in your hand, the most friction is going to be on the front and the back strap of the gun. So it's good to have nice aggressive texture on there. It's not so aggressive that it's going to like cause your seat in your car, if you're carrying concealed or openly, to get frayed or anything like that. Some folks had that complaint with the RTF2, but I like it. It's a good grip texture. I'm not mad about it at all. Still retains the standard Glock grip angle, which a lot of folks don't like. A lot of folks are used to shooting 1911s, M&Ps, guns like that. When they present out with a Glock, they will be high on the target and their sights will be high. I learned how to shoot with a 40 caliber Glock, so it was the first gun I ever shot. So for me, it's a natural grip angle, but for a lot of folks, it isn't. I suppose in some regards, it is a preference thing, but just kind of know that going forward. Another important point to make on the grip, of course, is that it does not have finger grooves. It's the first generation of Glocks to not have the finger grooves since the Gen 2, which we'll get into here in a little bit in terms of comparisons. So some folks really like that, some folks don't care. I'm in the don't care category. Additionally, we have our enlarged magazine release. It's the same size as the Gen 4. Of course, it is reversible, like I said, so that way if you're left-handed, you can put it over here on this side. It is not ambidextrous. That's my personal preference. The reason I say that is because with ambidextrous mag releases, a lot of times if you're carrying inside the waistband or outside the waistband for that matter, if you lean up against a wall or you bump into your seat buckle or something like that, it can cause that magazine to drop free and you not know it. It might just be out just a little bit and all of a sudden you have a one-shot gun, and that's not good. So that's my personal take on it anyway. Our actual slide lock and slide release is ambidextrous, and in true Glock fashion, they can't get the finish right on it. These things wear like nothing else. I don't know why. The Gen 5s are especially bad in that regard, but they're ambidextrous. And this is a later Gen 5. The early Gen 5s, these things stuck out a little bit and would give me rather false slide lock. Current production Gen 5s, I have no issues with that, so good on them for fixing it. I know I was not alone on that with the early Gen 5s. Continuing forward, we have our Gen 5 trigger, which we'll get into here in just a second. We have our enlarged trigger guard with a slight undercut. A lot of folks will take these on the aftermarket side and go through and actually undercut that even more, allowing them to get even higher up on the gun. Some newer design pistols have that built into it automatically. Not sure why on the Gen 5 Glocks, they didn't really go for a deeper undercut, but they didn't. But the trigger itself, again, making sure it is clear. We have our trigger safety here, which is this piece. If you don't press that, it doesn't matter how hard you press on the rest of the trigger mechanism, it will not go forward. It is one of the safeties that is built into all Glock firearms. There's others as well. Trigger safety that we'll show you guys here in a second. But if you are to get your take up, I will turn the actual compression on my microphone off so you guys can get a more natural, I guess, feel of what it sounds like. But we have our uptake, and then there's our wall, break. Hopefully you guys heard that audible reset pretty darn well. It's good. It's one of the things Glocks have always done very well, is having a good reset, tactile and audible, and then you're back at that wall immediately and can follow through. It's not the crispest trigger. It's not going to compete with any of the Canics, any of the Walthers, any of those guns out there that have absolutely excellent triggers. But I always tell people, if you can't shoot a Glock well because of the trigger, you just can't shoot well. The guns are very shootable if you do your part as the shooter. So there is that. Continuing forward, we have our Glock rail. It is a Glock specific rail. Some lights with 1913 rails will work on it, others will not. So just know that going forward, that little cutout there. And then of course we have our serial number steel plate inside of there, and you can take a look at this one. We have a slight, what's called a pig nose going on, where the actual frame is closer to the slide than it is back here at the front. Some folks really get worked up about that. I don't care about it at all, but it is still there to a little bit of an extent on the Gen 5. So continuing on to the slide. The slide does now have a NDLC finish, as does the barrel and a lot of internal components. NDLC is a great finish. It's very durable. It's corrosion resistant. It actually goes down into the metal itself. So even on the spots like up here where it's worn from my holster use, the actual corrosion resistance is still there. The surface hardness is still there, even though the actual black portion of the finish isn't there. Speaking of the black portion of the finish, it is not as dark as back when Glock had the Teflon finish, but it's a little darker than Gen 4 in person. So I think some folks do like that. Obviously, we have our markings here on the slide, 22 Gen 5, Austria, 40 caliber. Then we have our barrel markings as well with our proof marks on there that some folks definitely dig and get into. Serial number, of course, is going to match the slide, the barrel, as well as underneath on that plate. Then we have our optics mounting plate. The Glock MOS system is this right here. It is a plate system, so let's get into that. As it comes from the factory, it does have this plate on there, and if you don't really look closely enough, you probably won't notice that it is MOS capable. But as mentioned, it is a plate mounting system. All optics, with the exception, at least to my knowledge anyway, of a couple Holosun options out there, require one of the plates here from the gun, from the kit rather, that it ships with the gun to be used on there. So what is the criticism of the plate system? It's very legitimate. So basically what you have to do, obviously you'll remove your factory plate, mount this plate with a screw, and then you mount the optic to this plate with these two screws, or regardless, depending on the actual plate that you have for your optics. So what that does versus mounting it directly to the slide is it just causes another failure point. It absolutely can happen. It is weaker than the vast majority of direct mounting systems out there. That said, for most people, it will never be an issue for you. I've never broken one personally. I've seen one broken, but that was in a high round class where a guy was basically beating on it just to test it and test an optic system that he was working with, and it did cause the screws to shear out. That probably wouldn't have happened if it was direct mounted. But as you can see here, for example, with this system, we have our acro mounting plate, which is a battle steel plate. It doesn't actually come with an acro mount, at least as of right now. And then we mount the optic to the plate. So you do have an additional point of failure versus if it was directly on the actual gun itself, but it is just part of the MOS system. The benefit of it is that virtually any optic on the planet can mount to this gun, so that certainly is good. Now that we've shown the plate system, you may be asking, why do I have standard height sights on there? Well, when I requested this gun from Firearms Depot, I requested the standard one, not the MOS version. They sent the MOS version at the same time I requested from Excess Sights a set of their tritium sights, and I didn't know it was going to be the optics ready version, so I just went with the standard height one there. But of course, they replaced the factory Glock plastic sights, which are absolutely terrible, and Glock should be embarrassed that they actually ship on the gun. I've seen them come off multiple times, and the way that they actually shoot in terms of point of aim, point of impact, are off. For the vast majority of people, the way they see sights, the fact that it doesn't come with steel sights at its price point is simply laughable. But that said, the XS ones are a great replacement. Definitely check them out if you're looking into it. Now let's go over how to take down the pistol and show you guys some of the internals on there. We're going to push up here on our slide lock lever, and as you can see, verify that we are clear. At this point, you have to do something that a lot of folks don't like, and you have to point it in a safe direction and press the trigger. And that way, we can pull back on the slide a little bit and pull down on these two levers right here on each side of the gun, and let that slide go forward, and it will come right off as you see there. The geese are getting aggressive out here. Anyway, we're going to take out our recoil spring, and this obviously is a dual recoil spring. That's something that the Gen 4 introduced, and it does definitely cut down on recoil impulse, in my opinion. I don't want to give it a number, but it does a little bit. If you shoot a Gen 3 and a Gen 5 back-to-back with the same loads, you will notice a difference. And the current production one has the 1-2 marking on the end there. I know that's something that Glock fanboys always are interested in. And then our barrel here is going to be DLC coated as well. And you'll see, compared to earlier versions, it does have a more supported chamber. Now, the chamber on the 40 Smith & Wesson Glocks was always an issue in the early guns. Folks were having issues with the guns kind of exploding on them because it wasn't fully supported. It's still not fully supported, but it is more supported than the Gen 2 and 3 were. You can see we have a wide feed ramp there for feeding hollow point bullets, and you can see there that we do have some wear on it. That's just good, honest wear, but again, that protection is still there. Speaking of wear, I'm not sure if the camera picks it up, but I've basically worn kind of all of the finish off there, a good bit inside there, and that right there is our striker safety that we mentioned earlier in the video. Unless this is pressed on by this portion of the trigger going back, the gun will not fire. It's got a lot of safeties, so when people say Glocks don't have safeties, they simply don't know what they're talking about. They do not have thumb safeties, but other than that, there are plenty of safeties in there. Additionally, we have the etched number in there, which correlates to the serial number. It's the same number that's etched right there on the slide as well. There's also some internal markings on there, so if you're trying to sterilize a gun by quote-unquote scratching the serial number off, good luck. On a modern Glock, you're probably not going to be able to do it. You can see our parts back here are not polished like some of the aftermarket ones would be, but again, they do work just fine in terms of actual function. Now let's throw it back together and compare it to some other generations. I suppose we'll start with the oldest and go with that. This is a Gen 2 Glock 22. Again, this is the first pistol I ever fired in my life, so I'm very partial to this particular one right here. Not this one, but this model itself. And obviously we had some improvements made over the years. It's not grippy at all. This thing is very, very slippery. If your hands are sweaty or bloody, it is going to slip on you like crazy. However, it does not have the finger grooves. Of course, we have our good amount of wear there on the slide release, nothing there on the opposite side, and the actual mag well is cut out so that we can strip and rip rather, your mags from the front. Whereas here on the Gen 5, we have a very good flare to it. It makes it easier to reload. There's a little bit of a bevel on the Gen 2, but it's way better here. And of course, we do not have the cutout on the current Gen 5s. Some of the earlier ones did. And then of course, we have no serrations there up front. Additionally, if we were to look at the actual barrel itself, you would see it again is not very well supported in terms of 40 caliber. Then we moved over to our Gen 3, which this was one of the more popular police guns out there around the country for decades, or for over a decade, rather, I should say. This one here is a 22 compensated, but otherwise it's the same as all the other Gen 3s. We have our finger grooves added with the texturing in there where your fingers are supposed to be. Still have that small magazine release on there. Still have lots of finish wear. As you can imagine, we added the light rail as well. And then of course on the inside, if you take it down, we are going to have our actual spring. That is still a single spring on there. The actual striker safety is different shape as well, and there's some differences there on the inside of the trigger mechanism that you kind of wouldn't notice unless you're a Glock fanboy. But one thing I want to point out on the Gen 2s is that we don't have a loaded chamber indicator. That would be brought into the guns here with the Gen 3s. So basically, if you load around in there, there is a portion of the actual extractor that sticks out and gives you a tactile notification that the firearm is loaded, so you don't have to look at it in low light or anything like that. You can just reach up there, feel it, and if it's sticking out, you know there's a round in the chamber, or there's a serious problem with you not cleaning your guns. This is our Gen 4, next generation, of course. Again, this is very popular gun in law enforcement still to this day. Added the adjustable back straps, changed the grip texture a good bit. Much, much better on the Gen 4s. Added that dual recoil spring that we already talked about. You can see that the markings on there are very different as well than what we get there on the Gen 5s. Just with that, we added the proof marks on the actual barrel itself, the little pentagon one there. And again, we do not have the ambidextrous slide lock slide stop on there, but we added the bigger magazine release as well. The trigger on the Gen 4 is also an upgrade from the Gen 3 in my opinion. It's just a little bit more predictable, a little bit better wall. Same good tactical reset. That was carried over to the Gen 5. Of course, with the Gen 5, we added the forward serrations for the tactical ninjas out there who want to do press checks. No, I'm just kidding. If you guys want to do press checks, do press checks. I don't care. But they'd add the forward serrations. Of course, this is an optics ready. Gen 4s had the optics ready as well. And we have our ambidextrous release. You guys can see, I'm not sure if it'll come through on camera, just how much larger that bevel is. The actual aggression of the grip texture is pretty darn close. However, the having it all done on the front of the Gen 5s versus just on the recessed portions of the trigger, or the finger grooves there, in my opinion, the 4 is probably a little bit stickier just because you have those ridges there. But if we're just talking texture, the front is a little bit grippier there on the Gen 5, in my opinion. With the comparison out of the way, there's a few things I want to touch on before we close the video out. Number one, if you are a regular viewer of this channel, we definitely had to do a lot more editing and cutting than we normally did there in the up close and personal side, because there were helicopters everywhere during the filming of this video. I had to wait forever for the helicopters to get out of there for the noise to stop. At one point, there was literally a Black Hawk, a CH-47, and an Apache flying right over my house. There had to be some sort of helicopter exercise going on tonight or something like that. Regardless, into the pistol. Right now, this gun has just under 2,000 rounds through it, so it's more than I typically shoot, but I like this gun. I just like shooting it. I like, again, sort of the nostalgia of the Glock and 40 caliber for me. And again, all different magazines. We had 0 issues of any kind. The vast majority of the ammo was Cellar and Bellet, but we fired a bunch of Remington through it as well. Definitely thanks to them for their support. The S&B was sent out by Firearms Depot, which we appreciate as well. We also fired some 180 grain Spear Gold Dots through it, 2 magazines worth, ate it up just fine. So in terms of reliability, you simply can't do any better than that. It has been flawless across the board. So with that, what do I think of the price point of it? Well, as I sort of intimated earlier in the video, the fact that this gun comes with plastic sights, it should be an embarrassment, particularly at the price point of this one. So for the MOS version, which is the optics ready version again, right now, the cheapest I can find it on the internet is right around $620. I just saw one place for that. rate. And for the non-MOS, the non-optics cut version, the cheapest I could find it was $549. So it is not inexpensive, particularly when you think of the feature set that this gun comes with and some of the feature set of competitive offerings out there. So for a while, Glock absolutely was the king of the semi-automatics in terms of reliability and value. But no doubt about it, it ruled that category for probably 10 to 15 years. But these days, as I'm filming this in 2022, that simply is not the category. They may still have the largest percentage of market share. I'm not sure on that though. But the competitive offerings have really eaten into that share a lot, and for a lot of reasons that we talked about during the video. A lot of them have better triggers. That said, some folks don't like the lighter trigger, if you will, or the crisper trigger, and want the safety that the Glock trigger, the perceived safety that the Glock trigger brings to it. Some folks really like the grip angle. I am one of them. Some folks hate the grip angle. So there's pros and cons to everything. One thing I really like about the Glock system is that it's a very proven system. Additionally, accessories, right? Holsters, lights, lasers, optics, whatever you want for a Glock pistol in terms of accessories is readily available and relatively cheap because, again, they're just very common and there's a lot of competitive options, which drives the price point down. So that certainly is something good. But again, those plastic sights, and they're not even they're not suppressor height sights either. That's another thing. So that's just not good. One of the cons of the Glock system, in my opinion, which is becoming more and more relevant, I guess we'd say every day, is that Glocks, in my opinion, or my experience, rather, it's not my opinion. My experience don't run as well suppressed as some other options out there on the market. For example, HKs, their pistol, their design tends to run much better suppressed. Same with M&Ps, for example. Now that suppressors are becoming more and more prolific, it's something to take into account. But is it a good gun? It's fantastic. It's an awesome gun. I mean, like I said, almost 2,000 rounds with zero malfunctions. The accuracy is awesome. All different weights of ammunition. You know, it's good. Is it something that I would recommend for everyone? No, absolutely not. Particularly being a 40 Smith & Wesson. There was definitely a period after the 1986 Miami shootout with the FBI where there was a gap, I guess you could say, in performance between like 9mm, 40, 45, all of those things. They were very different in terms of how they perform, particularly in hollow point ammunition. That said, that gap has narrowed significantly with technology. These days, you know, your gold dots, your HSTs, your Winchester Ranger Ts are all going to meet the FBI's guidelines for ballistic performance in every one of those calibers. So if the 9mm is going to meet the same performance standards with defensive ammo as a 40 Smith & Wesson will, and, you know, of course, it's roughly 25% less recoil. Do you want to go 40 Smith & Wesson? I don't know, man. It's up to you. One thing I will say that it does a little bit better, 40 does, is if you're using like full metal jacket or hard cast bullets for like walks in the woods against big game threats and things like that, 40 still does a little bit better in that regard. But that's probably one of the few spots. Again, it does a little bit better in glass performance barrier tests, but a little bit, not much. Most folks are going to probably be a little bit better going with 9mm in terms of that recoil impulse. It doesn't bother me, but I realize I'm not everybody. That said, a lot of competitive shooters still use this gun to this day for the power factor that it does offer being in 40 Smith & Wesson. That's one of the more popular reasons people are picking up this gun is for competitive shooting. And for that being optics cut, having the good capacity it has, having the reliability it has, having the accuracy it has. And one thing I didn't mention is the Glock changed the rifling in their barrels on the Gen 5s as well. The same is true for this one as well as it is for the 9mm. So it definitely tightened up the accuracy a little bit. That said, most people can't shoot as well as even a Gen 4 Glock could shoot, never mind a Gen 5. So I'm not sure that's a huge deal, but competitive shooters, it's probably a big deal for them. These guns are very accurate for pistols. I think that's really all I've got for you. At this point, if you are subscribed and you've hit the notification bell, thank you. I really appreciate that. You guys are the heart and soul of the channel. You guys are what make it work video after video. And if you like this type of in-depth review and you've not subscribed to the channel, definitely think about subscribing. If you've done both and you're still not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel, make sure you sign up for my email at the website that you see here on your screen. The email rather goes out once a month and it just contains all of the videos since the previous email. So that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content. Additionally, if this thing goes on sale, comes in stock, because these are not in stock all that much, which tells you they're pretty popular, despite all the things everyone's saying in the comments about the 40. But if this thing goes in stock, comes on sale, anything like that, we will send it out in the daily deals email. The same is true for ammo, optics, sights, all of those sorts of things. If it goes out in the daily deals email, as the name implies, it's every day. If it goes out in that email, it is the best price on the internet that I'm aware of anywhere. So that way it saves you guys some time because you don't have to do the looking. I've done it for you, and hopefully saves you some money as well. And that email has 6 or 7 of the best deals that I find around the internet every day. So with that, that's all I got for you. Thank you for watching. I truly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the next video.